In this video, we've asked Michael Brooks of Safeguard Controls to demonstrate how to connect the external wiring of the call box, which includes the power and the relay wiring, to the contact closures on the gate operator.
I'm going to go ahead and strip back black and red for our power, and then our output from our relay is blue and green. It's so important that you have the appropriate wire strippers for this size of wire. You can damage the conductors, individual strands in there, and cause all kinds of problems. Most of the experience that I have with these call boxes is that they're installed in an exterior situation. So I'm going to use some gel-filled B connectors. These are insulation displacement connectors, and they don't require the wire to be stripped, but as a habit, if you will, I like to strip the wires back to know that I get the best connection possible. And then the teeth that are inside the insulation displacement connector will bite down on that conductor in there. Because we're going to use an 18 gauge wire that's made for outdoors, the jacket is a little bit heavier. I'm going to prep these by cutting the ends right before the metal. And then I'm going to squeeze them open just a little bit. That way I can make sure that I get the conductors of both wires in there and that they will both have the protection of the gel that's inside these. They make different sizes of these, just happen to be the ones that I have on my truck right now. So sometimes you got to make do. We'll take a pair of needle nose and we'll squeeze them open just a little bit. So we got 4 conductors, we got 4 B connectors that have gel in them. Now we'll prep the wires that are going over to the gate operator. Now that I have the insulation removed on all those conductors, I will twist them together. It makes the circumference just a little bit bigger, but it gives a cross section that bites onto the other wire. So we're going to go black and black together and red together. That'll be our power. And we'll just take a regular pair of needle nose and crimp these together. We'll get the insulation all the way in there, and then we'll use the inside of the needle nose to crimp these together. We'll get these connectors all the way on top of the insulation and then squeeze them together, and that will make a good connection. I've got all my connections made. We'll leave this open until we get our final test in, and now we'll go ahead and prep these wires right here. Now we'll take our signal, and it looks like we're going to need the same thing. We're going to need a couple more inputs. So we'll go ahead and strip a wire back for that and make the connection. And I'll stick with the same color scheme that's coming from our speakerphone. Let's twist the blue wire, which is our switch positive, is what it's labeled on the speakerphone. Put that in here. And then I'll take the conductors that were in the exit input, and I will put those in here as well. And I'll pull on all of them to make sure that the connection is good, and then make the connection in our terminal block. Now we just need to run low voltage power over to our speakerphone, and it's going to come from the 120 volt outlet that's on the side and the transformer that's provided from Ritron. All right, we're getting close to testing this thing out, so I went ahead and pulled out the walkie-talkie. It's got a full charge on it, so we're ready to go with that. I went ahead and plugged the transformer that Ritron supplies into the 120 volt outlet on the gate operator. Now I'm going to take a female plug adapter. I don't think there's one included with the power supply. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in right here. And this will give me just enough wire to run over to the 4 conductor wire, goes to the speakerphone. So I'm going to strip this back. I'm going to twist these wires together because I like creating a cross section to have some resistance on the wire. When I twist them together, they have a little bit more resistance because there's a little bit more material that adds resistance to it. I'll grab a couple gel-filled B connectors and finish this connection right here. Now here's a little tip that you may not think about. When you're prepping your wires, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and do all of the processes together. So if it's stripping the insulation back, I like to do all of the conductors. It's twisting the conductors together, I like to twist all the conductors together. I like to do all of those at the same time. That way the tool that I need, I have in my hand to do all of them at the same time. So now we'll put our B connectors, our gel-filled B connectors on there. Make sure that we get all the way on the insulation so there are no conductor exposed. Now we'll crimp them. Again, going back to doing all of them at the same time. We've got our B connectors to our power supply, and then we've got our Wago connectors that expand the number of inputs and outputs that we have. And then we have our B connectors connected to the conductors that are inside the speakerphone. Nice and clean. Nice and clean. Since it's the first time that we're going to hook the speakerphone up to power, I want to verify my incoming power so I don't damage any of the equipment. I'll use a basic handheld digital multimeter and confirm that I have 12 volts. When using a handheld digital multimeter, there are a couple of tips that you should think about prior to using the multimeter. First of all, you want to inspect your leads, make sure that they're not damaged, make sure that they're plugged into the correct terminals, and buy a voltmeter that's from a reputable manufacturer and buy the corresponding probes and leads that go along with it that are made out of good quality material. Prior to turning on the voltmeter, you may want to double check to make sure that you have a good battery in it. Quality digital multimeters will actually have a low battery indicator. As soon as you turn it on, it'll indicate that there's a low battery. Before I test anything using the handheld multimeter, I want to confirm that my probes are plugged into the correct inputs that I'm expecting them to be, and that they actually are working. So what I did is I turned the digital multimeter over to the continuity setting. I touched my two probes together and confirmed that I was getting continuity. So now I know that my probes are working and I know that they're plugged into the proper inputs. Now that we know we've got good continuity, we'll go ahead and switch over to testing voltage. Now I'm going to put this meter in a mode that will test AC or DC. Either one that's there, it'll pop up on the screen. That way there's a little guesswork for me. And I recommend having a multimeter that has that auto volt mode just in case you miss something and you're expecting AC but you have DC. You at least know that you have voltage on the line and you might not want to connect to that particular device if it doesn't have the corresponding type of current. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our multimeter in the plug. We'll use our hot, in this case our red lead for the center plug, and then we'll test the outside lead and the jacket of this connector rather, and confirm that we do have 12.1 volts and our polarity is correct. Our center pin is hot. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug in the adapter, and this should give our speakerphone power. Because we're doing the initial test with the speakerphone, I'm going to go ahead and leave the door off. Just make sure again that you secure the door and don't leave it hanging by the cord that actually is attached to the speakerphone on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that I have good power, and I'm going to run the gate opener open and closed to make sure that it's operating safely. We've got good incoming power, so I'm going to go ahead and open the gate opener. I'm keeping my hand on the manual override just in case anything happens unexpectedly.
Your garage door is now closed.
And it looks like everything is functioning just fine, so we'll go ahead and try our first test from the speakerphone. I'll turn on my walkie-talkie, which I've confirmed has a full charge on it. Go ahead and give it a push-to-talk command from the speakerphone. test 1, 2. So we know that we have communication from the speakerphone to the walkie-talkie. Now just be cautious. Sometimes being too close to the speakerphone will actually possibly inhibit the range. So you do want to make sure that you're a few feet back from it and make sure that if it's not working as expected that you give yourself a little bit of range. Sometimes that helps. So let's go ahead and give it a command from the handheld walkie-talkie to the speakerphone, which is acknowledge it by opening the gate. So now that we've given it a command to open the gate, we've confirmed that we have power to power the speakerphone, and we have communication from the speakerphone to the gate opener. So it looks like this installation is a success. I'll go ahead and put the cover back on and test range and make sure everything's working fine. Now that we have everything turned on and working, we can confirm range with our customer. You do want to walk through all the steps that the Quick Start Guide takes you through with your customer. You need to explain what button that they need to press on the handheld walkie-talkie, how the volume works, channel settings if it ever gets on the wrong channel, what to do with it, and then making sure that it's charged in the base station and that it has the power supply hooked up correctly. You should do that and test, make sure that's working. The other thing that you want to do is test the base station and make sure that it has good range, that it's functioning, the customer knows how to operate it. Keep in mind it is a two-way radio, just like the handheld unit and just like the speakerphone. So you can test 1, 2, check 1, 2, test 1, 2. That is the communication from the actual walkie-talkie to the base station. So this is definitely a two-way communication for all of the devices. You could do the exact same thing with the speakerphone as well too. You don't have to wait for somebody to press the push to talk to button. You can actually talk to somebody before they do that, or possibly somebody's by the gate and you need to communicate with them. The other thing, it can be compatible with the existing RF infrastructure. So you need to make sure that you're communicating that with the manufacturer and with your dealer to make sure that when you do get this product on site, it's compatible with the existing handheld walkie-talkies. Now that we've tested the walkie-talkie and we know that it works, we'll test the base station open command by pressing the button on the front and having the speakerphone control the automatic gate opener. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the automatic gate opener on. We'll give it just a second to boot up, and then I'll give it a command from the base station.
If you have more questions about how to connect or install the Ritron GateGuard system, or where to buy it in your area, call us at 1-800-872-1872 or email us at ritron@ritron.com.